I believe we're live. You're on, Danny.
Good evening. We are so excited. We are so excited. We are so excited to see each and every one of you for another amazing Wednesday night joint Bible study. We are so glad that you joined us again. This is a wonderful moment for us, and we look forward to all of the amazing learning that will take place this evening. It is my joy this evening to welcome you to week 6 of Returning Home, the Outliers Collective 12-week Bible study journey through Dr. Lisa Allen's transformative book, A Womanist Theology of Worship. My name is Dr. Danny Bahuro, and I'm honored to be your host once again for this evening as we explore chapter 4, Understanding Black Liturgy. Guess what? Guess what, family? We had an amazing time on last week, and so we are back to discuss an even more important topic on tonight. For those of us who are joining us for the first time, we want to let you know all about our phenomenal Outliers Collective. This is a coalition of pastors committed to liberative African centered progressive ministry that affirms the full personhood of Africans living in America. We represent 4 congregations: Peace Baptist Church, New Hope Baptist Church, New Calvary Baptist Church, and First Baptist Church of University Park. United and sharing one shared vision that's built on 3 foundational pillars of identity, affirmation, and structure. Together, we seek to build a holistic, justice oriented ministry that goes far beyond just Sunday mornings. Over the past 5 weeks, we've been on a journey. We began with Dr. Allen herself, who introduced us to her work and helped us understand the foundations of womanist liturgical theology. We explored the importance of liturgy, our African roots, and the Black church. And last week, we had an amazing time talking about the clearings and the hush harbors,
Mm.
the sacred spaces where our ancestors practiced African liturgical traditions in secret, where conjurers and spiritual leaders kept the connections to the divine, even under the most brutal conditions. Tonight, we take another step forward. If last week was about where our ancestors worshiped, tonight is about how and why. Tonight's focus is chapter 4, which is entitled Understanding Black Liturgy. And our facilitators have titled tonight's lesson, Lay My Burdens Down, Worship as Release. Tonight, we're going to explore how African spirituality united with Christianity, not as a deficiency, if you will, but as an authentic expression of a people who have already carried a deep connection to the divine. We'll discover that the enslaved African was never spiritually empty. Across the continent, our ancestors knew God by many names, just as scripture reveals God as Jehovah Rapha, El Shaddai, and Adonai. We'll explore the role of ritual in worship and how it opens the portal for possibility of divine connection. We'll explore how the Hush Harbors was born out of necessity because the structured worship given to the African was simply not enough to sustain the spirit of a people. And we'll walk through 4 powerful themes that define Black worship and ritual: survival, resistance, deliverance, and liberation, affirmation, and joy. As Frantz Fanon reminds us, oppression is not just held in the head, is held in the body. Tonight, we're going to explore how worship became the space where our ancestors could release these burdens, find their agency, connect with a God who was already theirs. I have the pleasure of introducing two amazing gentlemen this evening who will guide our conversation. First, Pastor Michael Bell of Peace Baptist Church is a shepherd who embodies the spirit of community engagement and authentic ministry. And joining him, Reverend Dr. William Marcus Small of New Calvary Baptist Church, whose scholarship and pastoral heart bring a depth of understanding to everything we explore together. Before I hand it over to them, let's just take a moment to center ourselves and let's open our hearts and minds for what God has in store for us tonight. Most gracious and loving God, we say thank you. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for this opportunity to engage this text. Thank you for what our ears, our hearts, and our minds will experience in these moments. And now we ask, dear Lord, that you give us openness to hearing and taking in what our facilitators will have for us this evening. And remind us that you are with us and you promise to never leave us alone on this journey. In Jesus' name we pray and we thank you. Amen. Pastor Bell and Dr.
Amen.
Small, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Uhuru.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bahuro. What's up, man?
Man, I'm all right, brother. How you doing?
Man, as they say, I'm pretty fair for a square. I think I'm gonna fool around and make it.
Well, you ain't said nothing slick to a can of oil, Doc.
Yeah, man. So listen, man, it's just good to rap with you. Good to share with you. Just do what we do whenever we get together, right?
Yes,
the
sir.
Same kind of conversations, man.
Yes, sir.
So, just kicking it and talking about understanding the whole process of liturgy and how it lays out, right? And recognizing that liturgy is the order, is the design and the setup, and that even in fluid situations, right, even when it's not a routine, there's always liturgy. There's always an order, a structure, a form of how worship goes, even if it adapts. That's how we do it in the Black church, right? We can, for years we have run it and say, we're going to have this, we're going to have the order, then they're going to read the scripture, we're going to have the response and read it. And then the preacher always says the same thing, but there's always room.
Yeah, that's right.
For the Holy Spirit, right?
Subject to the Holy Ghost. Yes,
that's
sir.
right.
Yes,
that's
sir.
right. So even if it doesn't fit, in certain spaces, right, there's still room in how we rule. And so this liturgy, this process of worship is and has been a foundation in African-American worship since the beginning of time. But what we come to understand and what we're talking about tonight is that most of all, it's an amalgamation. It's a form of a layering in terms of Christianity and African spiritual practices.
Right.
And it's really not new, right? A lot of times people get wrapped up in it. And because of what we do in terms of our context and our African senses and our African sense of being, it gets vilified overall because Africa gets vilified, right? But to understand that this stuff is innate and it's new, and it's rooted in the faith for people who already had, our people who already had spirituality working within, right? And that we talk about in African spirituality, because the continent is so vast, there are different names for God, right? We understand that the majority of those of us who are here were brought from the western part of the continent, West Africa. But even in that, the names of God, of talking about the high God, understood that space and talked about the supreme being and the spirits that helped to work with the connections, right? That help connect God's humanity, right, and God's creation with the divine, right? So Africans, we took those concepts and connected them with Christianity, the Western Christianity we were introduced, and we have to say that, right? Right. Because we were introduced to the Western Christianity that we were introduced to in dues of the transatlantic slave trade, right? In that sense of Christianity, we were introduced and we began to create this thing that incorporated our African spirituality with these concepts of Christianity, and it provided and it produced several different faith systems in the Americas here in the West, right? Like Bad Bunny said, right? In all of the Americas, not just
all of the
United States, right? But all of it, right? Being connected to African people. So when the enslaved Africans came to this hemisphere, and they were given this Western idea, this Western concept of Christian structure, it wasn't foreign. It wasn't a foreign idea. It could be understood. It could be embraced. But because the Africans weren't empty, right? This whole idea about coming to the continent empty, right? And that, the European gave Black folk Christianity, like they gave them Christianity. They gave them a structure and an understanding of the Christian faith, but in terms from a Western idea. But the concepts could be connected to African spirituality, and they are still connected in terms of our worship and how we operate and how we function. And so Africans didn't come here as a blank slate, right? They came full and connected and understanding their spirit. And so the different names for God, Nyame in Ghana and the Ivory Coast, Yere in Ethiopia, or Yala in Liberia, Kalunga in Angola, the Olodumare, and Olorun in Nigeria, the Mulungu in Mozambique and Tanzania, right? All of these are names of the high God. God has many names, right? And see, I think one of the things for me is we get so uncomfortable when we talk about, Nyame, or when we talk about Yere, or when we say Olorun, right? When folk get bent out of shape, but we'll shout when the preacher says he is Jehovah Jireh. Right? He is Jehovah Nissi. He's Jehovah Tishishkenu, right? All of these names for God, right? But we ain't got no problem with it in the context, right? But we get wrapped up, right? We can talk about the God that heals. We can talk about God, our banner. We can talk about God of the righteous, right? We can talk about the God that provides, right? Because of the attributes of God, they're different. Because God does so many things, the attribute fits. And so even in our understanding of how we make these connections, the interpretation of this African spirituality gets infused and it gets mixed in with the tenets of Christianity, so that it forms this worship that is created due to the context. And it's not a deficiency. It's not a space of deficiency, because it still makes this connection. God is still reached. The Spirit still speaks. The Spirit still empowers, right? And it makes us, it speaks to us in our context as the authentic worshipers, that is not forced by the oppressor, right? And I think that's the beauty of it. It's something that the oppressor can't design. Right, that they can talk about. This is introduced to you, but you can't create it for us. You can't make it come alive.
And big brother, this is actually one of those things, especially as Dr. Allen is beginning and laying this framework in this particular chapter, that for me, it's more than a matter of only introduction, right? There is a significant point that is being made in the backdrop here. And you know me, I'm always seeking the so what of a thing. What is the relevancy here? Because, we're talking about these things, and you call up Olodumare and, okay, well, what does that mean really for me today? That's where church folk want to take you anyway. But that is a significant thing. And the relevancy is that this issue of syncretism and retention that has been introduced, this idea that Dr. Allen exposes in this text, points to the impact and the import of identity, right? The relevancy is just as the point that you made, that they did not come, Africans did not come to the Americas as a tabula rasa. They were not a blank slate. From the time of, and I want to say that was the contention of the first bull papal bull that was released, I want to say 490s or something like that, that kicked off this whole idea of coloniality anyway, saying that the individuals on that dark continent, they have no history, they have no culture, and they have no God. But the furthest thing from the truth, right? And the issue and the impact, the importance is what we do see is a God of their identity. The relevancy is seeing God in an essence, seeing the self at the same time, which is something that I think often is actually lost to us in our community. That the meaning of the rituals, the rites, the roles of our present day spiritual praxis has a lot to do with the same ontological, teleological tethering that held the Africans in America together way back then. It is a matter of recognizing a God, and particularly a God that can be seen in you. Which we have such contention with. You remember what's my show? They were in Chicago. Lord have mercy. Why in the world I can't think of it? Good Times.
Okay.
When they put the painting on the wall of Ned the Wino and Florida had a fit. But what they were trying to communicate through that entire episode was that sometimes I need to see a God I can recognize in me.
You know?
And the way the world has worked in this, you know, there's this unfortunately this tension with us being able to accept the language of the biblical text and Jehovah this and Jehovah that, and not the stuff of our own history.
And it's so bugged out because Dr. Johnny Ray Youngblood said one time, he said he found a statue of Othello. And he had it in his office because he needed an idea and an image of a God that looked like him. He said he needed to fasten his idea and his imagination around a God that looked like him. And it's a theo. I'm trying to find a word. You know, we deal with psychology and human behavior in the work that you and I do. I'm trying to create a word because it is a very psychological trip, right? It needs for your God to have that kind of power. There needs to be the psychological connection that the God cares and the God looks like and the God operates, right? So this African spirituality melds into practices of ritual and worship all throughout the hemisphere, right? Like Bad Bunny said the other night, right? All the Americas, all through that hemisphere. So in Brazil, it's looked at as candomblé. It's Haiti, it's Boudin. In Cuba, it's Santeria. And Suriname, it's called Winti, right? Trinidad, it's the Trinidad Orisha, right? All of these things infuse and speak to the level of the African connection. All of them have the origin of African connection to them. It's the same connection that happened to us in the United States, but due to the kind of oppression that took place on the continent, it falls under the description of the Black Church Universal, right? Under this guise of Christianity, because of the type of there was not or did not speak to a sense of rebellion to that magnitude in the Americas, in the United States of America. And so we find ourselves in, under the guise of Christianity, but the mindset of incorporating the African spirituality is still the same.
No, absolutely. And I think, bro, one of the things that is so critical for us to understand is that this melding that takes place, this process of retention, and syncretism, this dance that we have been forced in many ways to do.
Right.
That it was not a static process. That it didn't just happen. Remember, it didn't simply begin when the first folks were brought to these shores in 1619. We see this retention and syncretism show up prior to the transatlantic slave trade. When you read through ancestor Ivan Van Sertima's book, They Came Before Columbus.
Right.
You see the images that were brought from this place. They did not, though Africans had made it to these shores prior to, they did not leave the culture or their belief systems. They were incorporated. I just saw on the news not long ago, they found five pyramids in Kentucky somewhere recently. Right. But when you're talking about this, it begins prior to the transatlantic slave trade, but then it works its way through the period of slavery until Clotilda, the last slave ship to come to America, lands in Mobile, Alabama in 1860.
Right.
With each ship that arrived, stolen Africans that would be integrated into the new world, brought their culture to these American-born Africans, and they would once again recycle, reintegrate the rituals and the rites and the stories and the spiritual practices within this ever-evolving and mutating mystery we call the Black church.
Right. And one of the things we cannot overlook is the power that comes from that root. Right. We can't dismiss the power that comes from that root. Right. Because that is the source of strength. That is what makes the Black church ever so unique. Right. That is what makes it ever so particular to us. I think when we talk about ritual and we talk about, the road and the ritual of how things go, God was doing God's work in the world, right? God was doing, and God's work has been, being done. And the ritual of worship, what it does is it helps us to understand how we are connected to that work. How we are connected to that partnership, how we partner with God to do the work that we're encouraged to do, right? Ritual helped the African make sense of the madness of what was taking place to them, right? To navigate the new world and to state and create the state that they were in, right? That what ritual helps us do, even now, what ritual helps us do is work through the struggles, the crises, to create the tensions of life. I was watching, getting ready to come back and fly back from Columbus this morning. I was watching Rustin on Netflix, and Bayard Rustin was talking to one of his white colleagues, and he asked him if he had ever been to a Black church, and he said, "Have you ever seen the excitement?" And he said, "It's like what did he say? He said it's like an ecstatic rage." That's what he called it. It's like an ecstatic rage, right? And he said, but it speaks to a catharsis, of speaks to a sense of release, right? Worship helps us manage. Worship helps it a catharsis to process this thing, right? And the ritual offers different things for us, right? But most of all, it makes us aware that we are a participant in the process. Right. What worship helps us do is remind us that we're still on God's mind. Right. That we are on God's mind, that we are not forgotten, right? That we are meant to move forward. And that it may mean that we have to wait, may mean that we got to rework a plan, may mean that we got to go for broke, right? Whatever it is, we got to do it, right? The space, right? That we talked about last week, that the space, the meeting that's set up, hopefully tells us or leads us to move into spaces where we believe without a shadow of a doubt that God is with us. So if that means I got to operate in different ways, right, and function in different ways. And I think, and we can kick this idea, I think we have been conditioned, or we've conditioned ourselves to talk about wait on the Lord too much.
Oh man,
right.
Oh yeah,
because it's all about waiting. The battle is the Lord. The battle is the Lord. But there are some spaces that we are called to do different things. Right. That in the storm, the psalmist says, "Be still and know." Right. But in another storm, Jesus tells Peter to walk on the water with him. Right. So in 2 Kings, the lepers say, "Why are we gonna sit here until we die?"
Right.
Right. And then
Right.
and then at the Red Sea, God is telling Moses, hey man, this ain't time to make no speech. It's time to
Right.
get moving.
Right.
Right. So there are different spaces, right?
Right.
You know, in the book of Exodus, God tells, he says, the Lord's going to fight for you. All you need to do is be still. There are different layers and interpretation of what we need to do and how we operate. And ritual helps us get to the space where we hear, hopefully, that we hear God show us what to do, show us how to respond, show us how to be. What is it that we need to do?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I love this. I love it, man, because this is, first of all, it's so right. But I don't want to get off this thing of identity, because you're bringing in this point with great magnitude about the co-creation, right? That we're participant. It's not even so much that I am that God has me on God's mind,
right?
But it is almost that there is this demand for reciprocity and a responsibility of working in union, in concert, with God.
Right.
And so I co-sign all you say, but there was it took me to remember this past week. I had a question that came from one of your cousins here in DC, in the faith community we call the House of Peace. And Dr. Allen continues to use language in the text, particularly in reference to ritual, that has possibly, perhaps, thrown some of our cousins, thrown some folks off. Because she talks about ritual as a way of conjuring.
Yeah.
Right. And I think in the text, Theophilus Smith is the citation, the definition she uses in the text that notes the ecstatic worship or spirit possession and conjure as two ritual strategies of Black people in North America. And I thought it critically important for us to pause and note that the language we have used around many of the rituals and practices have not only been demonized, has demonized the African cosmological worldview, but it has reprehensibly bifurcated our present communities, our beings, by making us believe that conjure is some type of evil, anti-Christian ritual that is in fact practiced, is actually practiced by more Christians in America than anybody else, probably. That people disregard this idea of the invocation that takes place in your Sunday services is a practice and ritual of conjuring. Here I am, this human mortal being stepping at the tiptoe edge of earth, calling to the spirit realm, saying, God, we invite you to come and wrestle with us in this service. It ain't just the invocation, it's the doxology. We done gathered all of this money, my tenth, my tithe, we done put it together, and we gonna sing that even though it ain't gonna fall in the bank account of heaven, God's gonna bless it because he's working with us in the mystery of it. So I just wanted to stop for a quick second as we're talking about the language of ritual. I don't want folks to be so thrown off that they are apprehensive about these ideas that are in fact supremely rooted, as you said, the power of it being rooted in our African tradition and our African cosmology. And it shows up in your Christian Sunday services all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
It's the foundation of it, right?
Yes.
But because it's been given, because it's been given from the lens of the oppressor and not understood from the liberative space of those who practice it. Right. It's given into that idea.
Right.
Yeah. It's I know we got to move, but they bother me. The super duper holy person that
Yes,
can't
yes,
that is just so holy that conjure is a problem. They
yeah.
bother me. I gotta be honest about that.
Be
They
honest,
bother
man.
me, right? They can't, like if it doesn't show up in the wording of European idea,
Right,
then it's not authentic, right?
right,
Because somehow or another that's holy,
right,
right? And that's the only thing that can be holy.
right,
But
right.
without understanding, just how tied in and rooted, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
I said this last week, man. I promise we're gonna get back. I said this last week. I said, to Bible study class, I said, we need to understand. I said, I'm gonna say something that's gonna trip you out. I said, when the European brought us here through the transatlantic slave trade, right? We left our cousins, our mothers, our grandmothers, our uncles. I said, them people just didn't evaporate.
Right.
I said, them people live lives, them people had kids.
Right.
I said, so your DNA is linked. You got family.
Connected.
You got family there.
Man, come on now. Come on
right?
now.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, like you can't disassociate just because you're here. Like you literally have family, like physical family.
Right.
Right.
In your DNA.
Right. Your DNA is over there. Like literally. Making kids, having reunions, being connected.
Here is the piece that trips me. And I know we gonna go. We're gonna keep moving.
Right.
But I don't know. I like to settle in this space because it's getting good to me. What trips me out about the connection is I remember my first time going across the seas and setting foot, and for most individuals who go back to Mother Africa for the first time, it's always the same story,
right?
And none of us adequately describe it.
Right.
None of us can really. It's a feeling. But what's interesting is as I started to mature, I noticed that I do have a similar feeling and experience when I am back here on this continent called America, North America.
Right.
And it happens when you're talking about the DNA, it happens in these weird moments. My mama, I ain't gonna tell you how old I am. I'm a grown man, but as old as I am,
right,
my mama
right
can sense something in her mama knower.
Right.
And I will feel that, or she will feel that, and the next thing I know, without fail, she on the phone.
Yeah.
Or that moment where you feel in ecstatic worship, this connection with all that exists around you, and those whom you are connected to, and those who are connected to you.
Yeah.
And that you can't get away from that. Why would you try to think you can ignore who you are, what your identity is?
Yeah.
Man,
okay. The cognitive dissonance bothers me. I guess that's what I'm saying. It just bothers me to no end, right? Yeah. So the worship empowers, right? It empowers, it recharges, it helps us to regroup, and it is an act of resistance. It's an act of resistance. Rites and rituals are forms of communication, but they're also acts of literal, physical, spiritual, emotional resistance that helps us get back up and get back in, right? The creator who established the order of the cosmos, worship gives us means to literally re-actualize the act of creation, right? So what it means to recreate is in the middle of chaos, right? That something can come forward, that in the middle of nothingness, in the middle of what we think is empty, God has the ability to visualize and create something new, a new world, new possibility, new opportunity, new chance, new shift. All of those things happen as a result of that connection.
And brings to bear the same which you had already lifted is this responsibility, this innate responsibility that we have to remain in co-creation with our Creator.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love how you put that, man. Like we are partners, right? We journey with God in the creation, right?
Yeah.
And so the syncretism, like you talk about, the Africanisms, right? That evolve as a result of it, right? Africanism is a characteristic or a feature that is rooted in African culture, right? So the Africanisms that we have, our handshakes are Africanisms, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like when we greet each other, those are Africanisms. You go to the continent, you watch people, you know, do several different hand movements in terms of greeting, like Africanisms, phrases and and terminologies that we have, certain Africanisms, and they are Africanisms in our worship, right? And the understanding is that the faith was curtailed in a way that spoke to our situation, it spoke to our need, it spoke to what we needed, regardless of how it was viewed, right? The Christian story does not need to be vilified. I mean, it's not about vilifying it, right? The story doesn't need, the concepts and values of Christianity are rooted in the soil of African culture, right? The story begins with us, right? You are part of the story, and our story becomes it is a becoming, right? To understand that we are invited, right, and expected to participate in the journey, right? There's an evolution in the process, and we often don't think about it like that, right? But there's an evolution even in our spiritual development, right? You know, Christianity, we gonna scare some people right now, Mike. Jesus wasn't Christian. I mean, you know, I want to blow your back. I want to blow your wig back. But Jesus wasn't Christian.
No, he was not, Reverend.
Right. I mean, we read the Old Testament as an evolution, right, into the teachings of Jesus Christ that evolve into an idea of Christianity, and so Christianity, Jesus, you know, isn't in the label sense of it, right? You know, and by the way, for the people who are watching this, the FBI or whatever. You know, Jesus didn't speak English either. You know,
oh my Lord,
Jesus didn't speak English either.
Oh my Jesus.
So, you know, so there are different ideas of how this thing evolves, but the Spirit of God always remains, the presence, right? The evolution of how it is. It is the power of the essence that we go that becomes the focus of the source, right? It becomes that ought to be the purpose, right? How do we how does our faith deepen? Right at the end of it, how does our faith deepen? And the Hush Harbor was that space, right? It was needed because it gave us the structure. When they tried to say, you know, the African was insufficient, or there was something that was that the worship on Sunday morning, with the overseer preacher, with black or white, with the overseer preacher. Right, that one was tolerated. But the Hush Harbor, is where power came from.
I mean, and when you think of it, man, the character, particularly of the Black church, is so deeply rooted in this theological idea that we are in partnership with our Creator, who sustains us through the resistance of journeying back to freedom, being in the place with God. And you're absolutely right, man, when it comes to the Hush Harbors. And here's the thing that always is intriguing to me, is that these brush harbors and these hush harbors are necessary even today. Because to your point, you have the white slave master who is surveilling your activity, your engagement with God, but you in a peculiar way also still have that same image in blackface, that is present within our Black sacred space as well. There was always surveillance, and we had to be extra careful, even in the brush arbor, to make sure that Negro that does the work over there in the big house don't go telling on us. You know, that we got free, even if it was just for a minute, just for a little while. You know, and so I don't know that you can in any way believe or fall into this idea that in American culture and in Christian culture, that somehow this is still not a necessary component for our current faith tradition. You know, anyway, that may be a
because and it goes back to the psyche, man. It can't be under the approval of the oppressor. Right. You know, and too many of us have the mentality that it got to be okay with the oppressor. In order for it to be legitimate. You see what I'm saying? Like, in order for it to be legitimate, in order for it to be true spirit, in order for it to be whatever it is, in order for it to be okay, it's got to be appeasing and satisfying for the oppressive state. And the truth of the matter is that that is so counterproductive to the essence of what African worship and African ritual and liturgy is.
And it, in a sense, it is dumbfounding because some of our faith communities would prefer not to have a prophetic voice in the pulpit, so that the comfort of towing the line of acceptable spiritual practice, which is co-signed by the slave master. Thank you, Dr. Only. Let me pull myself back. She gave me the time check, so I've been Baptist long enough. I know what that means. We can move forward. Protocol being established. Amen.
The legend was, my father used to say at Howard University, when Mordecai Johnson would be in, and he would be giving his big speeches as the president of Howard University, he would go on and on and on. And when Mrs. Johnson put her gloves on, that's when he would wrap it up. That was the sign. So when the gloves came, when she put her gloves on, that was time for Mordecai to wrap it up. But with three things, but a couple of things real quick. Themes of worship and ritual. We gonna talk. We look at survival. We look at resistance. We look at deliverance and liberation, and affirmation and joy. These things that the hush harbor this African worship brings. And survival is essential for the African, considering the origins and the nature of their existence and Africans' existence early here in this country, We can see the experiences of trauma that were given at any given moment, physical expectations, family trauma, family members being sold away, mental, emotional, and spiritual burdens, It's a traumatic experience, The psychological abuse of chattel slavery overall, And to talk about the body keeps the score, With Frantz Fanon, what we just talked about, Frantz Fanon saying that the oppression just doesn't happen in the head, it happens in the body, it happens in the physical. And so leaving it with God and working through those things was an answer to your situation in the space of empowerment.
Right. And here is another so what for me in this, bro, because without conversations like the one that we have been having over these weeks, like the text that Dr. Allen has wonderfully written for, we rarely are able to connect with the why of what we do in worship. You know, this theme of survival, the architecture of the ontology of our worship. We haven't discovered why our worship is so ecstatic, why there is rhythm like it is, and movement and music and ecstasy, why it's generated in such high decibels or with such vigorous passion. And you got to forgive me, I grew up Pentecostal. And,
Sure, they
and
know.
if
Okay.
there was one thing we was gonna do, is we was gonna dance. We gonna dance. You hear what I
Yeah,
say?
right,
In the
right.
Pentecostal church. Me and my cousin used to get together in the morning and practice our dance before we got to church, because we knew when
Right,
Sunday get here, we was gonna dance.
right,
And
right,
but this is not just simply the innate remembering that
right,
is apparent and does exist. It is also the necessity, as you said, to survive. We just talked about the trauma our
right.
people have experienced, and to move the trauma that gets seated and sits into sickness because we don't
Yeah.
move.
Right, right,
You
right,
know, and
right, right.
what the wild thing is that colonialism would have you show up as a black person in a black church and parlay with respectability politics,
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
your mind and mouth shut, keep your
Right,
body stiff, and miss the moments of movement during worship because you're trying to act like someone else.
right,
When
right,
the culture that constitutes you has
right,
constructed and conditioned you, suggests that movement is also ritual.
right,
Dance is
right.
ritual. Music is ritual. Uh, I, I we got a couple of seconds. Let me just tell this quick story about a trip there to Africa when it's offering time. And one of the gentlemen there in the service doesn't actually have anything to give in offering. But
I
when he
saw the
comes
same
forward,
thing. I saw
he
the
is,
same thing.
man, come on. And dances like there's no tomorrow. And then
Right,
when you find out why he is dancing, I mean, with more fervor than anybody, and the whole church is going up, right?
right.
But he is doing his thing. Why? Because that was
Was the
his
offering?
offering.
Yep. I
That
remember
was his
that.
offering.
We were. I remember. I have taught that and told that story in Ghana. Yo, that lady, she was coming down, Doc. She was coming down that
Man,
aisle, and people was giving her props. And
yeah,
she put her hand over the thing, opened it up, and nothing fell out.
nothing,
I went in, Doc. I went in, Doc. It
nothing.
was. I saw the exact same thing, bro. It
And
is. It is. It is that. It is that. Yeah.
it blew my cap back because in Pentecostal church, we used to do that. My grandmama would make you during offering time, you know, when we used to get up and bring your offering to the table,
For sure.
even if you didn't have nothing, she would make you get up anyway
Right.
and
Right.
go to the table. You be marching like everybody else in the church. Didn't have nothing.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so
Right.
and these possibilities that are entrenched in our being and the relationship that we have with the Creator, we cannot discount them. We don't throw these away. But anyway,
Right.
let's keep on
Yeah.
moving. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, bro.
So we get to resistance, right? So we speak to the space of resistance. It's the space that reminds us that the self and what it means to understand that we do have agency, right?
Right.
Exactly what we're talking about. That
Right.
we have this agency, that we don't have to relinquish ourselves to or accept the current status quo. This is incredibly important, particularly in the atmosphere that we are living in now. That resistance isn't just for resistance sake, but it speaks to the person and to the purpose of being authentic to who we are, right?
Right.
That whole idea of stealing away is
Right.
a sense of authentic being. It's a sense of speaking to that resistance, right? To say that, you know, we're gonna meet, we're gonna worship, we're gonna learn how to read, we're gonna give ourselves information,
Right.
we're going to run, we're going to resist, we're going to plan to revolt and rebel, right? All of those things, right? Unjust laws are going to be resisted. We're just not going to take and accept what they give us.
Right.
And you know, those spaces of resistance and using those mother wits of passive resistance, right?
Right.
How Ray Charles in the movie called it country dumb, but how, you know, we will make it seem like we're gonna go with you, but we're gonna do something else in the back of it, right? And we're gonna talk about those things, right? And operate in ways in the spaces that still helped and that still spoke to this level of understanding who we are, right? Which is why, you know, in the hymn we say, "And before I be a slave, right, I'll be buried in my grave," because the body might function a way, but the mind understood something different, right? The mind and the spirit operated in a different space. And so we have to keep the spirit moving in that regard.
To be sure. And this conversation really richly blesses me. And as does, again, we got to shout out Dr. Allen for such a wonderful text,
right?
Because she's lifting this as an idiosyncratic character trait of Black church biology.
Right.
That character that is traced all the way back to the ministry of Christ, because the identity that is developed in this is the so what really is.
Right.
It is completely antithetical to the meek and mild ministry we've been taught for so long. No, your worship, your rituals, your rites, they are resistance. And in a sense, they are resistance of messianic militancy.
Right.
It is having the audacity and, as you said, the agency to see the God of creation in oneself and in your neighbor, and know that you are maladjusted because of the character of your traditions and your identity, because of who you are. I ain't made that way to take this kind of stuff. I wasn't built like that, you know?
Right.
Martin King said he was maladjusted to injustice, to segregation, discrimination, and militarism. He argued that refusing to adjust to those social evils is necessary to move from a midnight of man's inhumanity to man to a daybreak of freedom and justice. And this is what real religion looks like. That's what real religion looks like. It looks like resistance.
Right. It has to be empowering, right? It's got to be empowering. It has to speak to that. So real quick, we got 3 minutes. So we're going to talk about this deliverance and liberation, right?
Yes.
Deliverance and liberation is connected to the sense that there is a sense of freeing up, right? Occupying your mind. Where your mind goes, your behind will follow.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing, right? It can be, and deliverance speaks to a condition of a mindset. It can be liberation is the ongoing process, right? The deliverance is the understanding that God, like we're saying, I ain't built that way. Deliverance is understanding this is not what God desires for me, right? This is not my life, right? This is not the way this is supposed to be. Liberation becomes the process of how that looks, of how God begins to set us free, right? Deliverance is the understanding that we have been set free, that we are free and connected in that space. And so the Hush Harbor was empowering in the sense and liberating because it helped Africans believe that the liberating process was taking process. The Igbo word Ogichi means it talks to, or the same sense of the zeitgeist, which means what's happening in time, what's happening in this particular moment. That Africans were connected to understanding the time and what does God want us to do in this space? What is God calling us to do now and moving to places of liberation and freedom? And how do we talk about being in those spaces? The justification, right? And we can get to, you know, the tenets of the Baptist tradition in your hymnal, right? The justification, right, is that we are counted righteous by God, right? But the sanctification is the becoming of the process, right? How we are being made, right? We are being made holy. We are being made through our works of living, through our acts and what is taking place. But our deliverance is that we have been rescued, that we understand in our process that God is rescuing us. In that space. And the final place of this is affirmation and joy, right? How do we speak to the theme of affirmation? And the ritual affirms, again, our sense is the individual, our sense is community, recognizing that community, not just prayer, not just singing, not just the frenzy or the shouting, but the community and the fellowship. What does it mean to recognize in the spirit of Ubuntu how we are connected, right? And understanding that connection, that and in that connection, understanding that the systems and the structures of oppression can't do anything about that, right? Like they can't. This joy I have, the world didn't give it to me. right?
And
That whole idea, right? And so it speaks to the inner space of affirmation as to who I am, as to who God has created me to be, and to believe in those circumstances and believing that God has something else for me.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's it, Doc.
Yeah. So all of that speaks to a space of empowerment. All of that speaks to understanding the beauty of who we are, and affirming that beauty. I mean, I think that is like so essential. Like, I think the sense of walking in the beauty of who we are, and affirming that. And I think, and I'd like to get your thought on this real quick. I think part of what is necessary for our liberation is the understanding. A large part of it is the beginning of the affirmation, right? Of the affirmation of understanding who we are in the beauty of this creation, and saying it is enough, it is okay, it is good, right? And you know, I don't know if you call it arrogance or what, but saying it is God designed, it is the first.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. No, man, I don't have any ideas to add to or offer to that other than to simply say ashe.
Let it be so. Let it be so.
Let it be so.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the cool things. I think, and maybe this is just a quick explanation of outliers, right? What we discuss and what we try to understand is that, in a very real sense, we did not feel like this was happening.
Right.
We didn't feel like this kind of work, this kind of explanation, this kind of teaching, this kind of investment in the African spirituality understanding was really taking place for empowerment for our people to do some really amazing things.
To be sure.
And so it came to us to say, well, listen, how do we do this?
Yeah.
You know, and because when you feel like this, and everybody's kind of doing status quo stuff,
right,
you feel like an outlier.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? You know, you feel like, well,
it don't make sense. It don't
make
sense.
Right.
Are you telling me I gotta leave this part of who I am over here in order to be this with you over? No.
Right.
No.
Right. No. And here's the trick. Even with your own people sometimes.
With your own people. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
He running for the line. He running for the line, boss. He running for the fire line.
He running for the line. Tell him about the gun line, boss. Tell him about the gun line.
Tell him about the gun line.
Yeah. So yeah, man. But it's I think this is good work. I think it's empowering work. I think it's transformative. If you're not afraid to hear it. You know, in that regard, if you're not afraid to hear it. And if you're afraid to hear it, but you're courageous enough to step in it, I think it'll be very liberating for a whole lot of people.
I do. Yeah. I think when you have the opportunity to face yourself, to see yourself, and to see in your reflection the God of all creation shows up there right where you are and doesn't ask for you to discard any part of who God has created you to be.
Yeah.
And oh, what kind of liberation it must be to exist in a world where, to your point, you know you are more than enough.
Right. That's that. I knew you was gonna make it beautiful. I knew you was gonna make it beautiful. Well, thank you, man. Always good, baby.
I love
you. Always
brother.
good, man. I love you too, man. Know what it is. This look. This is Gamma right here, baby.
You better.
Gamma chapter right here, baby.
Sir.
You better recognize. So we are grateful. So I guess as we close out, we will share in this moment. If Dr. Bahuro has anything to share with us or information, we'll close out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, this has been an exciting evening. We want to thank everyone who joined us on today. Tonight, we explored how Black worship functioned as survival, resistance, liberation, and joy. And we are excited because next week we're going to trace how those worship traditions developed and evolved over time. How did the liturgy of the Hush Harbor become the liturgy of the Black church as we know it? What was carried forward? What was lost? What are we being called to reclaim? I'm so excited because our facilitators next week will be Pastor Reginald Williams and Pastor Joe Mitchell. We will explore, in some sense, the next chapter in our book. Listen, if you haven't purchased Dr. Allen's book, we want to encourage you to do so. You can find the book at Orbis Books. We are dropping the link in the chat right now. While the book isn't required for us to participate together, having it will make your experience much more lively and engaging. Thank you for all of those who joined us on tonight. Thank you for trusting Dr. Marcus Small and Pastor Michael Bell this evening, and all of our collective outliers with your Wednesday evenings. Thank you for believing that another way of worshiping is possible. Thank you for believing that we are all called to be more authentic, more liberative, more rooted, and that is possible. We'll see you next Wednesday for Chapter 5, Black Liturgical Development. And we would ask that as we close, you will receive this blessing. May you walk in the wisdom of your ancestors. May you worship in the fullness of your identity. May you live in the justice of our God. And may you always know your way back home. Ashe and amen. Good night, family. And also, don't forget to complete the survey. See you next week.